5.5 to 6 years. Um, I currently work as a student advisor at Fleming College, as well as a career coach and facilitator here at Devont. And I spent almost 2 years working exclusively with job seekers, hoping to get into the tech industry as web developers and data analysts. So I'd like to think that's a little bit of an area of specialties for me. So if we have any people in the group that are looking to get into tech, I'd be happy to answer some of your questions at the end. But yeah, today's workshop is really just general, how to find a job in Canada, how the Canadian job market works, what the typical Canadian hiring and interview process looks like. And I'm sure we'll have some time for questions at the end as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Keelan. So we can go ahead and stick the next slide. So just a little bit of background and information on Devont. So if you are already familiar, amazing. If not, we do support students, alumni, and newcomers to get hired within Canada. So far, we've had over 40,000 job seekers from across Canada, over 500 career development events, and this is definitely one of them as well, and over 30 Canadian employers with active job opportunities, and we are constantly adding on to that as well. So I know we briefly discussed a little bit about a welcome so far. So if you want to have your microphone on, I mean, by all means, go right ahead. You can also keep yourself muted, type in the chat if you feel a little bit more comfortable with that. You can ask questions, raise your hand if you have any concerns, or maybe you would like for us to repeat something. The session is being recorded. If you missed that, I believe you get a little bit of a prompt on your screen to confirm that you're okay with that. And then we will be chatting a little bit about our upcoming sessions for the month of August as well. Okay, perfect. So for our first slide to start things off, it's about understanding the employer. So the main goal of the employer is to make money, of course, and to run a successful organization. So when hiring, the goal is to find qualified candidates like you all who joined this meeting this evening quickly and efficiently, and they're going to hire you as a favor or to help you. So they're not going to hire you, sorry, as a favor or to help you. So as you know, if you are someone who's actively job searching, it's quite competitive out there. So that means they are looking for the best candidate possible for the role. So this can mean taking into account your technical background, your soft skills, your experience, the education that you come with. So all of those things are taken into account prior to securing employment. Depending on your field and background, there are certain types of assessments that may also be administered. So I know I work very closely with supporting alumni to become junior data analysts. And before they even receive a phone call from employers sometimes, they often receive a technical assessment. So a little bit of a take home, a little bit of a project to work on. Then they are taken to the interview where they're discussing with a panel, 2 to 3 people. This can be someone from the department or an HR representative. So some of the things that we want to think about and keep in mind is, why should the employer hire you? How will you benefit the company after being hired, and basically what's in it for them? So I know this is not maybe the most enjoyable way to look at job searching, but that's exactly what HR and the company kind of has in mind when they are making their choices. So understanding the recruiter. So sometimes they are called talent acquisition, but if we think of the umbrella of HR, there are tons of different titles that they go by. And that's something else I want to be mindful of, depending on the background that you come from, is to also explore different titles. But that's a little off topic. So yeah, sometimes they're called talent acquisition specialists, HR, recruiters. Some employers use recruiters to also find, screen, and interview applicants for open positions within their company. So there are also headhunters as well, that sometimes employers will use to find the best candidates. So recruiters will review resumes, conduct job interviews, and select an employee for the position. Sometimes they also support with the onboarding process when the employee joins the organization. So if you are not already familiar, the main goal of the recruiter is to find the candidate with the best skills for the role that they are looking to fill. Alrighty, let me just go on here to the next slide. So the hiring process in Canada. So is anyone familiar? You can unmute yourself or type in the chat with what ATS is. Does anyone know what it might stand for, um, or what that might mean as a job seeker? Applicant tracking system. Perfect.
Mine.
Amazing. Yeah, so I'm just going to chat a little bit about what exactly that is. So ATS is just the abbreviated version of the word applicant tracking system. So a lot of the times, depending on the company, I do find that larger organizations use this. Basically, what it is, um, I don't even know where to begin explaining it, but it's kind of like a screening process. So, for example, if there's a job posting and an employer, of course, is looking to have that role filled, what they will do is input a few keywords from the job description and kind of filter out the resumes that do not have those keywords. So, for example, if you are an aspiring data analyst and I'm looking to fill a role, I'm going to ensure that Tableau, Excel, data visualization are a part of my filters because those are the words I'm looking for someone to have on the resume because I know they have the experience to be successful. So if your resume is not tailored well enough, you will not make it past the initial screening due to the ATS, which is the applicant tracking system. Let me go to the next slide here. So employer recruiter scans and shortlisted resumes. So typically we do find that recruiters spend about 6 seconds reviewing a resume um, before making that choice of do we want to take this person to the next round, which would be an interview, or do we want to kind of move forward with other applicants? So I know for myself, when I do screening for my participants, the first thing that I'm looking at is this formatted correctly? A lot of the times, if we are converting files from, for example, a Google Doc to a Word doc or Word to PDF, sometimes the formatting does get changed. And even though the content on your resume may be amazing, it may not look that way just because of the few formatting issues. Candidate pre-screening and interviews. So during the pre-screen call, it's, one of the things I always want to urge is to be prepared for that. You never know what types of questions might be asked. It has to do a little bit with your background, maybe why you applied for this job, what do you know about our company. So I also encourage you to have a tracker for these opportunities because you never know what to expect. So, for example, if you apply for about 10 jobs a week and it takes an employer about 4 weeks to get back to you, that means you've applied for roughly 40 or more jobs within that time. So when you get a phone call, you may not always be fully prepared with all of your answers. So if there's a way for you to track your applications, that will be amazing. In terms of the amount of interviews, again, that really depends on the company. However, the most typical process that I have seen is that initial pre-screening call, of course. Then you might have a second round interview where that might be a little bit more in regards to your experience, your work, your education as well. And then a third round interview that does involve upper management as well. So I would say roughly about 3 rounds of interviews before you receive that offer. Okay, background checks. So the purpose of a background check, for example, that could be reference checks. So we can talk a little bit about who to include in this. So one thing that I always urge my alumni or my clients as well, in terms of references, when last did you check in on them? When last did you say hello? We always want to maintain an ongoing relationship with our references and not only reach out when we are required to provide them as a reference for us. We want to keep them up to date, maybe send a message, maybe schedule a coffee chat. We always want to, yeah, maintain contact with them, right? So if you haven't spoken to your reference in about 4 or 5 months, and then you're coming out of the blue, hey, can you be my reference for this job? It is a little bit random. And the more you work on fostering that relationship with your reference, the stronger it will be when they receive that phone call from the employer to ask additional questions on you. I was recently a reference for someone, and one of the questions that they asked me were, would you consider hiring this person again? What qualities made them stand out? Were there any issues with this employee? So those are some of the things you want to keep in mind. So if you have an amazing relationship with your reference, amazing. If not, get to know them a little bit more. Employers usually request about 3 references, so just keep that in mind as well. When we talk about background checks, that might also include criminal reference checks too. So depending on your field, so I come from a social service work background. There's something called a vulnerable records check. So that one goes a little bit further than the criminal reference check, and it's also something that you have to pay for. And it also may take some time to obtain, depending on, again, your place of employment and what they're expecting from you. Offer of employment. So basically, you've done the multiple rounds of interviews. This is a company that you really want to work for. However, maybe you receive the offer letter and the salary is not what you had in mind for yourself. So when we talk about negotiations for this, we always want to talk about the research that you've conducted as well. So when we talk about research in the market, that might mean checking government websites. That might mean searching for other job opportunities with the same title. What are they offering? And then really understanding your worth and being able to back it up. So why exactly do you deserve to be making 65,000 versus 50,000 or 55,000? Making sure that we provide a strong rationale. Again, we have to be your biggest advocate when it comes to the negotiations. And we can always chat about that a little bit further as well if you have any other questions. Onboarding. So when you start a job, no matter what job you're in, no matter what company you're at, there's always going to be some form of training involved. So a lot of the times people are concerned, I've never used Salesforce before. I don't really know how it works. How will I get used to this? There's going to be training on it. There's tons of manuals, health and safety information that needs to be reviewed before you actually begin your role. So I find roughly about 2 to 4 weeks is like the rough timing, I would say, for training. And then again, even once you start your role officially and you've, again, depending on your background, if you are from social work and you're doing case management, there will always be someone there to kind of mentor and guide you. Have those conversations with your manager. Maybe you're more comfortable with CRM, but you would like support in another area. Communicate that with your manager or your supervisor so they can better support you moving forward. So like I said, every job that you work at will have that onboarding process no matter what. So you will always be given some form of training to help you better settle into the role, become more familiar with the company. One thing that I did when I started working at my job was booking coffee chats with the staff who worked there. So depending on the size, maybe there's 10 people who work on your team, have some one-on-one time with them. There might be some tips, some tricks that they might be able to teach you. Of course, maybe along their employment time there at the company, they have a few tips and tricks that they can share with you to make your life a little easier. So I would highly recommend setting that up. So I'm just going to go on to the next slide.
All right. I think I'm going to take over from here, Tiffany. I think this is my slide 12. Yes?
Yes.
Before we go, I've been monitoring the chat and we have a few questions about the
Oh,
ATS,
perfect.
unsurprisingly. The first one, does a table make a resume less ATS friendly?
I will go ahead and say that it is not maybe the most friendly item to include on your resume. I kind of find that less is more when it comes to that. I usually encourage having bullet points. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my screen with everyone on here. Bullet points are always a huge help. So one of the things that you can do is even creating columns of bullets. So for example, if you have technical skills that you want to include, and you have 15 things that you would like to share with the employer, um, putting them all in a list and then going to separate them by 3 separate columns will probably present a little bit more better versus having everything in a table.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. I agree. I think a table is not super ATS friendly. And the reason why it's so difficult to determine if something is or isn't ATS friendly is because there is not just one generic ATS system out there. There are so many different ATS systems. Different companies will have their own ATS systems that they use. Some of them are much more advanced and they'll be able to rate a table no problem. Some of them are a little bit more they're a little bit older, they're not as advanced, and a table might mess it up when it comes to word pairing or word parsing. So for example, if you have text in a table, instead of reading everything in the table individually, when the ATS pulls the text out of your resume, it might merge the text in the table together, format it incorrectly, put the words in incorrect order. Again, some ATS systems will have absolutely no problem with tables, but some of them are a little bit older, a little bit less advanced, and won't be able to parse the words in a table format. So I like to be safe. I use just a basic Word template document with no tables and just bullet points. Somebody also asked, what is the recommended resume format? I know I just said that I use a Word document, but I mean, I build my resume in Word. But whenever I'm sending it to an employer or uploading it onto a job search website, I always recommend PDF. Again, just to make things easier for everybody can open a PDF. You might have an employer where their company uses Google Suite instead of Microsoft Suite, and they might not be able to open that Word document. It's just a lot easier if you use PDF. Also, you know that if it's in PDF, your formatting is going to stay the same. Sometimes if you send a Word document, when they open it on their end, the formatting is a little bit different, whereas PDF, you know, it's going to look the exact same. So I would recommend a PDF. And the final question about ATS, Tiffany, I can give this one to you. How can we check if our resume is ATS friendly? Do you have any tools or tips?
Yeah, so I know Devant has a tool. So does everyone have access to the platform who's in
Yes,
here?
everybody
Okay.
in here should have access. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know that they have a tool on there that can support with that. But if you do want to test something else out, there's also JobScan as well. So that's one that I usually promote in my other job that I work at. So you're basically uploading the resume, you're uploading the job description, and it's basically generating something called a match rate. So it will tell you how much of a match, of course, your resume is to the job opportunity that you just uploaded. So when it comes to, honestly, when it comes to resume, we all have our own personal biases. So I might say one thing, Keelan might feel otherwise. Maybe your friend who just got a job will tell you, well, this is what worked for me, so you have to do it my way. So it can become a little bit overwhelming at times to hear all of these different opinions. Again, I would just encourage you consistently apply for jobs. Maybe you're doing 15 to 20 tailored applications a week consistently and see what works best for you, what generates the most traction. Oh yeah, and then going back to JobScan in terms of a match rate, I always encourage at least 70 to 80% of a match in order to really make it past the ATS screening.
Perfect. Those are the two that I would recommend as well. JobScan is a really good go-to. I've dropped the link
Mhm.
in the chat if anyone wants to check it out. And on your Devant portal, we do also have a resume scanner tool that acts as an ATS scanner. So I would use both. Um, Better to be safe. And like I said, there's different versions of ATSs. JobScan is going to have a different ATS system
Mhm.
than the Devant tool. So you'll be able to tell how your resume works on different ATS systems. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can talk about different job boards in Canada. So Tiffany, if you could actually stop sharing just for a
Yeah.
second so
Um,
I can hop on to
yeah.
and do some demos. Thank you.
That while Keelan is getting her screen ready, there's also another one that so job scan, the little catch there is that they only give you 5 attempts to check your resume and run it through the system. Job analytics is another one that I've been hearing a little bit more. It's becoming a little bit more popular. So it's an extension that you can get for your Chrome browser, and it basically will do the same thing in terms of scanning your resume.
All right. I actually don't have the option to share my screen for some reason. Just strange. Do you have it on your option? And Tiffany, can you give me permission? Sorry, everybody. Zoom difficulties. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so before I share my screen, can everybody use the chat or even unmute if you'd like, and let me know what job boards you've used in the past when you are job searching. Couple really big ones out there. There's some smaller ones as well. Job Canada. Okay, awesome. Do you mean Job Bank Canada? That is a good one. That one's hosted by the Government of Canada. LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn again. Fantastic. Yes, you've got the big ones. LinkedIn and Indeed are definitely the most common ones that people usually go to. Glassdoor is a good one as well. Any other ones? Oh, yes, my cat. I'm sure you will see her again and hear her. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you'd like to take a screenshot, these are some other job boards. You guys got most of the big ones. We've got Indeed, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Canada Job Bank. I think someone else said Glassdoor. So these are some good job boards if you want to take a screenshot or just wait for the recording to be sent to you later. I don't think anyone said Workopolis, which is another one. Charity Village is actually one of my favorites. It's great if you want to work in a not-for-profit. So Charity Village has jobs as well as volunteer opportunities in the not-for-profit industry. So if that's something that you're interested in, Charity Village is a really good one. Monster is also a job board. It used to be one of the really, really big ones. It's not so popular these days, but it's still around. Aluda is a great one as well. Job Boom, even Google just has a job board. Like if you just go on Google and type in like web developer jobs, Google will pull up a bunch. Sometimes from the Google job board, and sometimes it'll pull from other sources as well. So it can be a good kind of one-stop shop. Company websites is one that I always recommend. So something that you might not know about job boards is typically you can post a job on a job board for free. So an employer can typically post a job on LinkedIn or Indeed for free. However, they have kind of clauses to make it so eventually that the employer has to pay. So for example, you might post a job on Indeed and it might let you see the first 50 resumes for free. And then Indeed will charge you to look at the next round of resumes. So you can post it for free, but you're kind of limited to see how many applicants you get. Or actually, I've heard of employers posting a job on LinkedIn or Indeed, but not actually using LinkedIn and Indeed to message or reach out to any of the applicants. They would just grab their email off their resume and email them directly. And I've heard of LinkedIn and Indeed kind of penalizing the employer for that. Like, hey, we got you all these candidates, but you didn't use our platform to reach out. So we're going to charge you a fee for using us. So for those reasons and more, some companies just don't like to use third-party job boards and they only post on their company websites. So for that reason, I usually recommend checking out company websites. This is one, good because there's going to be less competition. If I always say that the harder a job is to find, the fewer applicants there's going to be. So if you do a little bit of digging and go onto a company website and find a job that's only listed on the company website, there's probably going to be like fewer applicants than there would be on a job on LinkedIn or Indeed, because those are the big ones where everyone is going. Two, it also shows that you're really interested in working for the company. Like if you're going to that company's website regularly and checking for job postings, they're going to be able to tell that you're really passionate about working for them specifically. You're not just applying because you need a job. That's part of it. Of course, you need a job. But companies love to hire people that are really passionate about working specifically for them. So company websites, keep an eye. You have maybe 5 or 10 companies that you're really, really interested in. Keep an eye on their website and visit them regularly to check that. And also, there's some niche industry job boards as well. So for example, if you're looking for a job in HR, Hire Authority has one, but there's niche job boards for almost every industry out there. So even if you just go online and type in like education job board, you'll find a niche job board for a specific industry. And those can be good ones as well. Again, a little bit harder to find, which means fewer applicants for the role. Perfect. All right. So now I'm going to stop sharing quickly. I'm actually going to hop over to LinkedIn and Indeed and do a quick little demo just to show you some of the features. So let's start with LinkedIn. For the sake of an example, can somebody unmute or put in the chat a job title? Any job title can be a job that you want, can be a random job title that you thought of. Sorry,
Business analyst.
Say that one more time, Anish.
Business analyst.
Business analyst. Perfect. I've got some in the chat, so we'll do a couple. Okay, so let me hop over to LinkedIn quickly. Can we see my LinkedIn? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, don't judge me for my unread messages, and no, I need to catch up on LinkedIn messages. If you're one of those people, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's do business analyst. So I'm just on the jobs tab on LinkedIn. I'm going to go up to the search box, and I really like the LinkedIn search box because you can see you can search by job title, you can search by skill, you can search by company, you can search for all types of things. So let's start with business analyst. This is going to bring up a lot of results. You see we have almost 1,000 results here. I'm going to narrow them down. So usually when I'm looking for a job, I like to narrow it down by the past week or the past 2 weeks. I like to get in there early. You don't want to be like the 500th applicant to a job if you can help it. I like to get in early if you can. Also because sometimes companies just forget to delete the job posting. So if you might be applying a month after it's posted, they might have already hired for that role and just forgot to go on and delete the job posting. So I don't want you to be spending too much time on jobs that no longer exist or that have already been filled. Another thing is some companies have a policy where they don't actually remove the job posting until the role has been officially hired for, like until the contract is signed. So they might be in like third round interviews, but the job posting is still up. And it's very rare that they're going to go back and start at the first round interview again for somebody that just applied when they already have people in the pipeline. So for that reason, I usually do a week. If you're checking every single day, you can filter it by 24 hours, but for now, let's do a week. This is going to take us from over 1,000 results to just over 300 results. So we're getting there. And another thing, I'm looking at all of Canada right now. Let's filter it down to the GTA area, which brings us down to 100, which is a lot more reasonable to go through than 1,000. If you want remote, I would keep this at all of Canada and then filter remotely. You can see there's lots of filters on LinkedIn. This is why it's such a popular job board. It's really customizable. You can even filter by experience level and salary. When you're first doing a broad search, I usually try to keep these pretty open, especially with experience level, because sometimes it's more of an entry level role, but it might be incorrectly labeled. So I usually just try to keep it open. And you can see that it will usually promote ones that are actively recruiting first. So LinkedIn is flagging this one as actively recruiting, which means that they know that this company has been reaching out to people who have been applying for this job. So if you apply to this role, it's likely that you might hear back because they are actively recruiting. So those are always good ones to go to. And you can also see how many applicants there are, which I know is something that people get a little bit worried about. I'm sure you've been on LinkedIn before and you can see that it'll say like 200 plus applicants over the last 2 days. And people start to get a little bit panicky, which I understand. But the way that LinkedIn actually counts applications is by clicks. So for example, I'm not going to do it, but for example, if I clicked apply here, it would very likely open up a new window for me to actually complete the application. But LinkedIn would jump this from 22 applicants to 23 applicants because I clicked apply. I might not have actually finished the application. I might not have tailored my application. I might have sent in an unrelated resume that's not going to get considered, but it's still going to count me as an applicant because LinkedIn has no way of knowing if I actually applied. So oftentimes, if you see like 200 plus applicants, some of those people might not even have applied. They might have just clicked apply. It opened up a new window and they never actually followed through with the application. A lot of them are probably going to send in a resume that's not specifically tailored for the role. So as long as it's been posted within the past like week or so, even if it has over 200 applicants, I would still consider applying, just because you never really know who's applied and how you compare to those applicants. Another very cool thing about LinkedIn that I really like is it automatically tells you if you have any potential connections that might work here. So for example, if I look at this Scotiabank one, it's telling me that I have 7 connections that work at Scotiabank. So this makes it very easy for me to click on this, see all these people that I know that already work at Scotiabank, reach out and message them and say, hey, Jasmine, I'm thinking about applying to this role at Scotiabank. Can you tell me a little bit what it's like to work there? Do you have any tips for my application or for the interview? It makes it really, really easy for you to kind of get your foot in the door and make that connection. Somebody like Jasmine might not have any actual sway in getting me an interview, but she might be able to give me some tips about what her interview process was like or what she put on her application. So things like that. We can also set alerts on LinkedIn, which is fantastic. Just a lot of really cool tools. And also like skills. Tiffany before was talking about the ATS. LinkedIn makes it really easy for you to know which skills to put on your resume. So for example, I was applying for this role. I know that I'm going to want to include analytical skills on my resume, data analytics, data lineage, communication, problem solving. Like it's actually pulling out the skills for me that the ATS is likely going to be looking for. So that's a really great feature as well. Now let's go back to the search box. And instead of searching for a specific job title, I'm going to search for a job skill, because different companies will have very different names and job titles for essentially the exact same job. So instead of putting in business analyst, if I go in here and maybe type in something like HTML, I'm probably going to get a variety of job descriptions. So you see, I'm getting everything from software developer to UX UI specialist to product designer, integration specialist. These are all roles that require HTML. So sometimes it's good to just search for a skill as well, because maybe if I want to work as a software developer, I might put that in, and it's only going to give me positions that have software developer in the title. Whereas I might very well be qualified for this integration specialist role or this UX UI specialist role. They're not going to come up because I just put in software developer. So sometimes putting in a job title actually limits your results. And if you put in a skill, you'll get a more wide variety of options. Any questions about LinkedIn before I move on? Let me take a look at the chat quickly. Is LinkedIn Premium worth it? That depends. I typically like to use LinkedIn Premium if I'm actively job searching, just because I don't have LinkedIn Premium now. So this is what it looks like when I don't have it. But for example, if I did have it, I would be able to compare myself to the applicants. So this kind of gives you a snapshot. It'll say like 90% of applicants have 5 or more plus years in the industry, or people who live in these locations have applied, which is sometimes nice, because sometimes if it's a role like in Toronto, Ontario, and you look and it says like 3 people from Alberta have applied, you know that if you live in Toronto, you're probably going to have a better chance of getting interviewed. So things like that are nice. Also, LinkedIn Premium allows you to message people for free. So sometimes people will have their profiles locked, so you can't actually message them if you don't have LinkedIn Premium or without using one of your credits. Whereas LinkedIn Premium allows you to message them, which can be really good for networking, which I'm going to talk about next. So overall, I like LinkedIn Premium when I'm actively job searching. You don't need it, but I think it is. I think it's nice to have. What about you, Tiffany?
Yeah, I was gonna say, depending on how aggressively you are job searching, if you're paying for LinkedIn Premium, you definitely want to make use of it. So I think it's about $50, $55 a month. So make use of all of your in-mail credits. I know, like I recently canceled mine, but now the amount of searches that I can conduct within a month have been shortened. So you can't see who's looking at your profile anymore. So if you've been actively applying and maybe your recruiter is doing a little bit of snooping around, you might be getting a call soon. Those are also very helpful ways for you to be able to better your job search process. And it does make things a little bit easier. I do know, like, ever so often you might get a random offer of them offering LinkedIn Premium for free for like a month or 3 months, or they might offer it at a discounted rate if you try to cancel. So those are some different ways that you can try to navigate that situation. Also, when you are paying for LinkedIn Premium, I believe you also have access to LinkedIn Learning. So that is, if you have not utilized LinkedIn Learning in the past before, it's an amazing platform. Anything that you could ever think of, job search related, is on there, but also you can look for additional courses and videos related to your background. So, and it looks good on your profile when you complete a certain course or you do a certain certification and it's related to your field of work. So I think my camera froze there. There is another comment in the chat there, and this person is asking how to find a co-op or internship job in hotels. So that's definitely a really good question. So if that's an industry that you were kind of aiming for, or you know that, after first year, you're going to have to keep an eye out for internships, I would begin building connections out from now. So maybe you find a recruiter, maybe someone who's working at a hotel in your ideal job title, send them a message, see if they would be open to having a chat with you, having a conversation with you. And who knows, maybe an internal referral is also going to be in your pathway due to you kind of building out that relationship. And then even signing up for keywords, that's a huge help as well. Okay. So my screen just froze. I think I will just be off cam for a bit. And then someone asked here, what is the meaning of reposted? I mean, why do companies repost if they've posted the job 4 days ago? Um, that's a good question. I haven't seen a reposted job within 4 days, but sometimes maybe they didn't find the ideal candidate. Maybe they need to have the job posted for some more time to find the right person. Um, and then that way they can collect more resumes, do additional screening to make sure the person is the right match for the role.
Yeah, so I think that question came because this one is specifically stating reposted 6 days ago. This doesn't mean that it was originally posted 6 days ago and reposted. This means that this is the repost and it was posted 6 days ago. But yeah, like Tiffany said, there's multiple reasons that a company might repost a job. One, they just didn't get any qualified applicants the first round, so they wanted to repost. They could be hiring for multiple positions. Some companies will actually have what's called evergreen job postings, which means the job posting is always up and they're always collecting applications for it. And then when a role opens, they already have a database of resumes and they can go back. A job that I applied to in the past was like that. I applied for the role, it was an evergreen job posting, and I think it was like 4 months before I got an interview. Because 4 months after I applied, a position opened, they went back and looked through their bank of resumes and then reached out to qualified people. Sometimes it's reposted in air. The company I currently work at reposted a role a few days ago and people were confused and asked questions, and it turned out that it was actually accidentally reposted and was never meant to be reposted in the first place. So there's a variety of reasons. Unfortunately, we probably will never know why the London Stock Exchange Group decided to repost this, but I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a red flag. It might just mean that they didn't have any applicants that they were really excited about the first time around. So I would still go ahead and apply. Okay, I'm gonna hop over to Indeed very quickly. So we looked at LinkedIn. Let's hop over to Indeed because it is another very, very popular one. Has a lot of the same features. I think I'm gonna pull from the chat UX designer, somebody said. So let's do a UX designer. And I'm actually gonna change this and I'm gonna put remotely. Indeed has a cool feature where you can just put remote and it will show you only remote UX designer jobs. Let me scroll in a bit so it's easier to see. And you can see a lot of the same filters as LinkedIn. We can filter by date posted. I would probably do 3 days or 7 days, depending on how often you are checking the job boards. You can see I got a pop-up. I can put in my email address and it will email me when new jobs are coming up, so I don't have to manually go and look. Fewer filters than LinkedIn for sure, but we can still filter by things like remote or hybrid, pay level, job type, full-time, part-time, even job language. But one thing that I like about Indeed is that companies will have their own pages on Indeed. So for example, if I want to learn more about Moon Valley AI, I can click on it and it will bring me to another tab that will tell me a little bit about the company. So it looks like this company is a bit smaller, so there's not a lot of information about them. So let's try another one maybe. Web marketers, perhaps. So you can see that this one has a little bit of information about the company. It looks like it's a small company, 11 to 50 employees. They're in advertising and public relations. You can see their website, their address, when they were founded. Sometimes it'll have actually anonymous reviews. Unfortunately, this company does not have any. It's going to make me log in before I can look any further, which is okay. But if you don't have an Indeed account, sometimes it only lets you look so much before it asks you for information. Sometimes it'll have salaries as well. So again, unfortunately, this company doesn't have any, but sometimes this gives you good insight. And even the Q&A tab. So like, how long does it take you to get an interview? This person says it took me about 2 to 3 weeks to hear back. And you can actually ask your own questions as well, totally anonymously. So that is a fun feature of Indeed that LinkedIn does not have, like the salary insights or the company reviews or a lot of company information and things like that. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing quickly and hop back to the slide deck. We've only got about 10 minutes, and I want to make sure we're talking about networking quickly as well. And yes, there is going to be the recording sent out on this. Usually within the next couple of days, you will get the link sent to your email, so keep an eye for that. All right. I've got another question for you. Feel free to unmute or use the chat. But what percentage of available positions are filled by somebody that is in the hiring managers or recruiters network? If you had to guess, what would you say? 70%? Good guess. Any others? Higher, lower, around 70? What do we think? Yes, absolutely. You can connect with us on LinkedIn for sure. So 80%. This slide says around 85. It's a rough number, but you guys are in the ballpark. I've heard anything from 70 to as high as like 95%. But yeah, I would definitely say around 80 to 85% of available positions are filled in somebody in the hiring manager recruiters network. And I think this is becoming more and more common these days when the market is getting more saturated. If you put yourselves in the shoes of an employer, you post a position on LinkedIn, within the first 24 hours, you get maybe 100 resumes. It's got to be overwhelming to go through those resumes. And then imagine that an employee that has worked with your company for a while, that you really trust, they're really reliable, they're a great worker. They come in and they say, hey, I have a colleague that I think would be a really good fit for this role. I worked with them in the past. I can vouch for them. You're probably going to be more likely to want to interview that person than to go through hundreds of resumes. Tiffany, did you have something to add to that?
Yes, I actually have very quickly a personal story. So exactly what you just outlined there is what happened to me. So when I was job searching, it's definitely not easy to be, job searching if you're already working. Of course, we job search because we need that source of income. We're trying to save a little bit. So thankfully, I had a colleague I worked with a few years back, and I saw the company she was working for was currently hiring. So it had been a little while since we last touched base and chatted with each other, but because she had worked with me before, she was able to vouch for me and actually complete an internal referral form. And due to that, I kind of got bypassed, I kind of got put to a little bit of the top of the pile because she was able to vouch for me and speak on a few things and traits that I come with. So a lot of companies and employers, they do have internal referral processes, and sometimes they get paid for it. So if you pass your probationary period, they get a few $100. And again, in this economy, who doesn't need that? So always stay in contact with your previous colleagues, your peers, anyone you went to school with, because you never know how they might be able to support you in your own job search.
I love it. I love that story. Amazing. So some of you might be asking, okay, I understand that networking is important. I want to get that internal referral. I haven't been in Canada very long. I don't know that many people. How can I get that? I get it. Networking can be tricky. We've already talked about LinkedIn. And you can see that I showed you that feature specifically where if you look on a job posting, it'll show you if any of your connections work there, which is a great function because then you can start reaching out to people on LinkedIn. But there's also another thing that you can do called informational interviews, which I am a big fan of. An informational interview is just having, you might have also referred to them as coffee chats, essentially having a 15 to 20-minute conversation with somebody who already works in the field that you're hoping to work in or already works in the job that you're hoping to get into. And essentially, it can be somebody that you know, or it can be somebody that you're just reaching out to for this purpose for the first time. You basically just sit down with them 15, 20 minutes, ask them questions about what it's like to work in that field, and ask them if they have any advice for somebody who wants to get into that field. Super important to start conducting informational interviews before you start actively job searching if possible, because the one thing that we don't want to do in an informational interview is go in and say, hi, can you get me a job at your company? This person doesn't know you. They're probably going to be hesitant to give you a referral because they don't know anything about you. They don't want to make themselves look bad if they refer you and you end up not being a good employee. So the purpose of an informational interview is to learn from that person, not to necessarily get a job, but it might lead to a job later on. So I have a personal story about this actually. Before I was a career coach, I was in school for career development at George Brown, where I met Tiffany. And one of our assignments was we actually had to conduct an informational interview with somebody who was already working in the field of career development. And the person that I conducted my informational interview with, I went to somewhere near her workplace. We met for a coffee over her lunch hour. I think it was just about 15, 20 minutes. I just asked her questions about what it was like to work in the field. And then many months later, when I had graduated and started job searching, I noticed that the company that this person I did an interview with was hiring, and I applied and then reached out to her and said, hey, do you remember me? We did an informational interview. We had kind of kept in touch on LinkedIn. And she was able to vouch for me. She put in a good word. She said, hey, I met with this girl a few months ago. She seemed really eager to get into the industry. And I ended up getting an interview and getting that job. So the payoff took a few months, but because I created that relationship with that informational interview, I did eventually get a job from it many months later. Whereas if I had gone to that informational interview and said, hey, can I get a job at your company? She probably would have been like, I don't know who you are, and I'm not comfortable referring you. So if you're still in school, start doing those interviews now and stay in touch with those people because it might pay off eventually. All right, we only got 4 minutes left. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Quick recap. Wonderful Tiffany reviewed kind of the typical hiring process in Canada and what that looks like. We went over some of the popular job boards in Canada. Remember, LinkedIn and Indeed are fantastic, but they're also the most popular, which means the jobs on those sites are going to get more applications than smaller job boards. And we also talked about the importance of networking and strategies of just reaching out on LinkedIn, as well as conducting those informational interviews and staying in touch with classmates or former colleagues. If you would like to talk to either one of us a little bit more, we do have a promo right now at Devant where for $95, you can talk to either one of us in a one-on-one conversation for 1 hour. We have other wonderful coaches as well. So the link I will just pop in the chat right now. It's just devant.ca.coaching. You can read all of our wonderful coach bios and book with the coach of your choice at a day and time that works for you. And again, it's just a 1 hour video chat. So you get 1 hour one-on-one to ask whatever you want about job searching, whether it's networking, whether you want your resume reviewed, if you want a LinkedIn review, if you have an interview coming up that you want to practice for, whatever you need, you get 1 hour of time to ask whatever you want about the job search. And some of our upcoming events. Next Wednesday is our monthly career coach Q&A. So it is essentially 1 hour of Q&A with two of our coaches in a format like this. On August 14th, we have a special workshop for financial literacy in Canada to help you with budgeting. I know we talked a bit about the economy and how difficult it is, so that might be a good one that I might attend actually. On August 21st, we have a Building Your Network workshop, which will go more in depth about ways to build that network and get some of those internal referrals eventually. And then on August 28th, we have our monthly immigration Q&A with the fabulous Elizabeth Long, who is an immigration lawyer, and she's talking about 5 rules to follow when studying as an international student in Canada. And then at the end, she always opens it up to Q&A as well, so you can ask just general legal questions. I always recommend attending that event. Lawyers are expensive. You basically get 1 hour for free with a lawyer. And she always has like a little promo code as well for a discounted session with her if you attend the event. So that being said, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this evening. Always a pleasure. And feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. And we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Bye bye.